privilégiés, qu'il faut écouter, qu'il faut associer aux réflexions et qui, pour la plupart du temps, ont la direction et la décision au niveau national, dans les familles, dans les communautés, parce que les femmes ne sont pas au même niveau de représentation dans les instances de prise de décision. Alors nous avons eu la conférence de Beijing, la déclaration et le programme d'action de Beijing qui continuent d'inspirer les États, les communautés économiques régionales, l'Union africaine, les Nations unies. Mais nous savons que ces documents n'ont pas donné toute leur quintessence. Tout ce qu'ils ont prévu pour les femmes et les filles africaines n'a pas été au rendez-vous, pour plusieurs raisons. Mais au niveau de la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples, nous avons très tôt pris l'urgence en compte de mettre au centre de notre travail les droits des femmes. C'est ainsi que le mécanisme de la rapporteure spéciale sur les droits de la femme en Afrique a été le tout premier mécanisme à être mis en place au sein de la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples. Et ensuite, la Commission a élaboré le premier draft du protocole de Maputo, le protocole désormais célèbre sur les droits des femmes africaines, confectionné, adopté par l'Afrique, pour les Africaines. Et donc, aujourd'hui, il s'agit pour nous pas de réviser, c'est de revisiter le document, la déclaration, plateforme d'action de Beijing, qu'est-ce qui a pu être fait, qu'est-ce qui reste à faire, avec quels moyens, avec quelle alliance, avec quel accompagnement. Voilà pourquoi nous avons ce panel aujourd'hui. Je vais passer la parole à l'honorable Lucie Assouagbor, qui est la rapporteure spéciale sur les femmes, les droits des femmes en Afrique. Elle va nous conduire à travers ce panel en offrant l'opportunité à des acteurs qui nous ont toujours accompagnés de nous dire effectivement quelles sont les perspectives pour les femmes africaines et quels sont les défis qui militent en faveur effectivement de tout ce que nous voyons comme retard, qui explique les retards, qui explique les dysfonctionnements, qui explique les insuffisances des politiques et des programmes en vue effectivement pour nous, femmes africaines, et pour nous, à la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples, à l'heure du bilan, que nous puissions effectivement dire voilà ce qu'on a pu faire, voilà ce qui reste, et voilà quel accompagnement nous avons, et voilà ce dont nous avons besoin. Merci, et je passe la parole à l'honorable commissaire Lucie Assouagbor, rapporteur spécial sur les droits de la femme en Afrique. Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, all. Permit me to start by standing on the existing protocols. I would like to start by highlighting the key areas which were covered by the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action. In fact, the blueprint, which was adopted at that time, focused on 12 critical areas of concern to women's rights. Firstly, the first concern was that of human rights of women, poverty, education and training of women, women's health, violence against women, women and armed conflict, women and the economy, women in power and decision-making, institutional mechanisms for advancement of women, women and the media, women and the environment, and the girl child. The Beijing Declaration underscored the need for strong action and measures to be taken by governments and other actors at the international, regional, and national levels to protect and promote the rights of women and the girl child. Various reviews have taken place since 1995, and the most important of which I will highlight is the 214 Declaration on accelerating the implementation of the Beijing Platform of Action. and this called for states to achieve gender equality by 2030, and spelled out in the AU Declaration on Gender, Agenda 2063. The declaration also welcomed. This declaration was also welcomed by the decision of the Assembly of Heads of States and Government of the AU by declaring 2010 to 2020 as the African Women Decade. Now, we would like to highlight that before this declaration, the African Charter, which dealt with human and people's rights, only referred to women in Article 18, and that was in the context of the family. Consequently, it was necessary for an instrument to be adopted to address women's rights. And that is how, as clearly stated by the moderator, the African Commission participated in the draft of the Maputo Protocol. And this protocol has been hailed and celebrated as a document which addresses specific conditions of the African woman. And more will be said about this protocol by one of our speakers. It is also worthy to note that other than the protocol, which is popularly known as the Maputo Protocol, the African Union also made a solemn declaration on gender equality in 2000 and adopted a gender policy. It also reflected women's rights in its Agenda 2063 and recently adopted the African Union Strategy on Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment. In contrast to the Beijing Declaration, under the Maputo Protocol, women's right to safe abortion have been particularly highlighted. And again, we'll have somebody talking on the abortion and the state of women in Africa. The AU in 2018 adopted its new strategy on gender equality and women's empowerment, which seeks to maximize opportunities for women and girls, ensuring their security, dignity, and resilience, making laws and institutions more effective, and strengthening their leadership, voice, and visibility. This strategy also promotes full implementation of women's rights instruments and proposes the development of a program titled All for Maputo Protocol, which promotes the universal ratification, domestication, implementation of the protocol. The significance of gender equality and women's empowerment have been further encompassed in Agenda 2060, Africa's framework for sustainable development, whose sixth aspiration is an Africa where development is people-driven, unleashing the potential of women and youths. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as clearly stated by the moderator, the African Commission has been very, very concerned with the promotion of women's rights by the institution of the mechanism of the Special Rapporteur. The African Commission has developed a number of standards and guidelines in order to assist states in the fulfillment of their obligation as far as women's rights are concerned. And this has been through the establishment of general comments, the first general comment of which was on HIV, general comment number 2 on sexual and reproductive health rights of women, the joint general comment between the African Commission and the African Children and Welfare Committee on ending child marriage in Africa, and most significantly, guidelines on violence against women, its consequences, as well as developed state reporting guidelines on the Maputo Protocol. And presently, the African Commission is working on a draft general comment on Article 7D of the Maputo Protocol, which is hoped to be adopted very soon. And this is meant to guide states as far as the rights of women in the context of marriage in case of divorce, annulment, or separation. Furthermore, the Special Rapporteur on Rights of Women also launched a continental campaign on decriminalizing abortion in Africa, and also we launched a campaign on ending campaigns on ending child marriage in Africa. At the level of the African Union also, another campaign was launched prior to that was the launch of a common position, African position on ending child marriage in 2015, and several campaigns on ending child marriage on the continent, and presently the Selina initiative on ending FGM in Africa, more details of which we will hear in the course of this. We also want to highlight the role of courts. The courts have played as far as implementation of women's rights is concerned by referring to the African court's decision against the Republic of Mali, in which the court found a violation of, for the first time in the history of the court, of the provisions of the Maputo Protocol, and also held that the Family Code of Nigeria violates women's rights recognized under international law, and ordered the state of Mali to modify its legislation consequently. Before we give the floor to other panelists, we want to acknowledge that so much progress has been made by way of legislation addressing discrimination against women, such as in areas of violence against women, female genital mutilation, child marriage, sexual and reproductive health rights, marriage and equality in marriage, and also increased participation in women at the level of decision making. Between 2007 and 2018, several countries have now criminalized the practice of FGM, including our host country, which is Gambia. Apart from the case of the African Commission, national courts too have also addressed the rights of women. The Namibian courts have had the opportunity of condemning the country for forced sterilization of women without their informed consent as a result of their HIV status. And most recently, the court in the High Court of Kenya held that the hospital violated the rights of new mothers who were unlawfully detained for non-payment of bills. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, despite these gains, there have been persistence in the violations of women's rights, which include harmful practices which still exist, lack of access to sexual and reproductive health rights. Women do not access land. Rural women in particular, though they produce most of our food, have no access to land, neither do they have access to credit. And also, women suffer the brunt of all the armed conflicts that is ongoing in Africa, as a result of which they are victims of rape, they lose their jobs, they lose their assets, they lose basic health services, leading to a lot of maternal mortality and morbidity. So in conclusion, what we want to say is that this year being celebrated as the year of liberation, we highlight the fact that 49% of the refugees are women, and that they suffer a lot of violations of their rights, especially with respect to losing their employment, losing their earnings, losing their dignity, subjected to all forms of violence, and also being subjected to other domestic forms of violence and xenophobic attacks. We conclude that as we review and celebrate the Beijing Protocol, the drive for progress must be improved in order to achieve the objectives envisaged in 1995, implementing international and international regional rights standards and frameworks, including the Maputo requirements, requires commitments by governments to gender equality, as well as strategic efforts by civil society to hold states accountable for their obligations in achieving gender equality. It is also critical to adopt an intersectional and human rights-based approach to confront the challenges of gender inequality and achieve the full realization for the fundamental rights of women. States are therefore encouraged to ratify, domesticate, and fully implement all international and regional rights, human rights instruments in order to promote and protect the rights of women in Africa. Yet, there's a slow pace of ratification, as you will hear shortly. I want to thank you so much for your kind attention.
Merci, Madame la rapporteure spéciale, pour cette mise à niveau. Et je voudrais à présent passer la parole à l'initiative de l'Union africaine Salima sur la fin des mutilations génitales féminines et la campagne sur l'éradication des mariages d'enfants. Robert Kassenen, qui est le spécialiste du plaidoyer et de la coordination du département aux affaires sociales. You have the floor. You have the floor. 5 minutes, s'il vous plaît. Merci.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner. Permit me as well to begin in lieu of the limited time for intervention to stand on existing protocols. Permit me as well to congratulate you, Madam Commissioner, for your leadership, and I wish you well as you continue this work, and as well to wish the new leadership well in their tenure, and we look forward to working with them. My name is Robert Kassenen, as you said, and I work with the African Union Commission on a newly initiated initiative called the Salima Initiative on ending female genital mutilation. I'm exceedingly honored to be here, and finally to engage as well with the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, the Banjul Commission. The Commission, similar to other accountability platforms and processes on the continent, and here I see also colleagues from the African Committee on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, and as well the African Court on Human and People's Rights, are critical in delivering transformation of Africa. They are critical in unlocking the potentials of our people. And accountability today is why we are here. Building on the work of the Banjul Commission, the African Union Heads of States and Government adopted a decision in 2011 at the Malabo Summit. I think it was the 17th session, ordinary session, supporting the United Nations resolution on banning female genital mutilation. And less than a decade later, we now have a continental initiative that says we will not leave any woman, we will not leave any girl behind to be subjected to injurious, irreversible practices, harmful practices such as female genital mutilation. And this is the Salima Initiative. The Salima Initiative comes as a result of a 2019 AU Summit decision calling for accelerated action to eliminate the practice of female genital mutilation. And in addition to calling for strong legislative frameworks that ban the practice, in addition to calling for domestic resources to deliver protection and care services for girls and women who have undergone female genital mutilation, in addition to the need to work with communities and opinion leaders where most affected, traditional religious leaders, to address the negative social norms that perpetuate the gender disparities that give credence to harmful practices. The decision also calls for a continental accountability framework that monitors member states' implementation of obligations and commitments to eliminate human rights violations and gender-based violence that is seen in harmful practices like female genital mutilation and child marriage. And here, maybe I can share a few words on the AU's child marriage campaign. Unfortunately, our colleagues who work with this campaign were not able to join us. The child marriage campaign was first launched in 2014, and since then it has had 2 review periods, and there is currently a process to finalize a 5-year strategy. There are 28 member states who have now launched national ending child marriage campaigns. And going forward, it is expected that we will merge efforts from both the ending child marriage work and ending FGM work so that we have a harmonized effort to end harmful practices together. And here, Honorable Commission, is why we're here today at the Banjul Commission on the eve of the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, and also as well as the International Conference on Population and Development Program of Action marking 25 years. And I think we will be seeing some of you in Nairobi as well when the global community meets to look at this. We are here for accountability. I will keep stressing this word. The impact female genital mutilation has had is extensive. The negative maternal health outcomes, the lifelong complications, the potentials stifled. There are over 125 million girls and women in Africa today that have been mutilated. And an estimated 50 million girls will be at risk of undergoing female genital mutilation by 2030. Girls under the age of 15 years old, if we do not take action today. There are also over 20 million girls and women who have been subjected to this practice by health professionals through something called FGM medicalization, where FGM is performed by medical professionals. And of the 28 countries in Africa that have FGM prevalence, 22 countries have laws either banning or criminalizing FGM. So we must ensure that these laws are implemented. Laws are only as effective as their implementation, and we cannot eliminate harmful practices without symbolic or legal instruments. We must be accountable. Honorable Commissioner, the African Union Commission has completed the development of the Salima initiative, and we now need an accountability mechanism to promote and track implementation of relevant instruments. States implementation with oversight of Member States' implementation of the African Charter's Protocol on Women's Rights, the Maputo Protocol, the Banjul Commission to this process is key. And to this end, the Salima initiative, seeking to deliver on a forward-looking decision of heads of states, would like to make the following recommendations to the Commission. One, that the Banjul Commission be a key part of the harmful practices accountability mechanism that is proposed and called for by this initiative and is also stipulated in the decision. That the Commission also works to strengthen the state party reporting guidelines and encourage member states to articulate regularly as part of their reports progress on eliminating harmful practices. For the Commission to consider establishing a role of a special rapporteur on harmful practices, and I'm not trying to take away from your role as well, Madam Lucy, perhaps by the year of 2030, that is adopted by African Union heads of states and government as a means for closer follow-up and examination of progress member states are making to end this injurious practice. And finally, borrowing from your comments, Commissioner Lucy, to have as well a joint general comment with the Committee on the Rights and Welfare of the Child on female genital mutilation. As I understand, there is already an existing one on child marriage. And so we commit to work closely with the Commission and support you in any way in moving forward to make this accountability mechanism endeavor possible, operational, efficient, and the norm. I thank you.
Merci, Monsieur Robert, pour toutes ces informations et surtout pour avoir tenu dans le temps imparti. Je vais maintenant me retourner vers Eric Mundia, qui est responsable du programme IPAS Alliance, pour nous dire un peu le travail que IPAS fait dans le domaine de la santé sexuelle et reproductive. Vous avez 7 minutes. Merci.
Thank you, Commissioner Maiga. Without taking much time, I want to recognize all the commissioners present and respectfully observe all the protocols, the existing protocols. So thank you very much. Eric Mundia. I work for IPAS Africa Alliance. And our work across Africa is to promote women's rights in terms of reproductive health. In our work, we have noted that very many women and girls in Africa are suffering from the scourge of unsafe abortions. Just to give you a feedback on it, we lose about 29,000 women and girls every year due to unsafe abortion. Africa alone contributes to 6 million out of the 24 million unsafe abortion in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, these are statistics that are not by IPAS, but from our respective governments. It is indeed our right and our obligation to protect the women and girls of this continent. So why have thinking or attribute to SRHR and access to safe abortion? So SRHR are parts of sexual, reproductive, and health and rights that are autonomous to a woman, because women are the only being who can or who have the womb. Thus, they require, I can say, unique rights that are not the same as to a man. Therefore, these rights over time have been degraded, have been pushed back, have been seen to be less rights than the other rights. SRHR and access to safe abortion in our country or in Africa generally have not been recognized fully. And that is why we as African states recognized and implemented or put up the Maputo Protocol to ensure that we can be able to uphold. Okay. Yes. So we put up the Maputo Protocol to ensure that we can protect and uphold the rights of women and girls in Africa. So these rights, when exercised in full,
coming.
Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. Let's continue fighting for women's rights. Yeah, so, as I was saying that the African continent did have the Maputo Protocol to protect and uphold the women's rights. It's important to note that no African country has a complete ban on access to safe abortion, that there are more than one indicators that each country has. So what is the effect of criminalizing abortion? So first, our women suffer from unsafe abortions. Unsafe abortion, if I can try and make it clear to you, is a procedure of terminating an intended pregnancy carried out by either persons lacking the necessary skill or in an environment that does not conform to minimal medical standards or both. Thus, if we criminalize abortion, we are removing the aspect of women going to any healthcare facility and accessing the service in totality. The second thing it does, it creates stigma around the issue of abortion. Stigma has been used by many people to harass, abuse, injure women who need the access. So the Maputo Protocol came in, and in Article 14.2c, it amplified what criteria or indicators that women and girls should be able to access safe abortion services. And these indicators include rape, incest, sexual violence, and all this. So if women in this regard have been raped, have been sexually abused, and they need to access the service, and the society is highly stigmatized about the issue, these women will run back to quacks and skilled providers who do not have any skill in providing this medical service. That is why we as human rights try to put up the issue that legislation cannot work on women's bodies. This is a medical issue. It should be led for women and girls to go to hospitals, talk with their healthcare providers, and get the best possible service. Thus, if we are able to decriminalize abortion, and I do want to laud the work the Commission has done in launching the decriminalization of abortion campaign in 2017, decriminalization will be able to help us destigmatize the issue of abortion. We'll be able to speak about and give information, create awareness to the population to understand what this issue is about. Women will be able to go to any health public facility, and they will be able to access the service without harassment, without any prejudice to their own health. We have seen that governments, through a study that we have done, which will be launched during the ICPD 25 that is coming up in Nairobi, the costs of unsafe abortion in most African countries. I can guarantee you, if and when you get hold of this book, you will be sad at how much we are spending to treat incidences of unsafe abortion more than providing the actual service to women. The costs are high, and governments are obliged under most countries to provide PAC services. PAC is post-abortion care as an emergency treatment. This cost many of our governments a lot of money and resources that could be used to promote the reproductive health of the women and girls in Africa. So, why do we believe that laws have been used against women? So, as we talk in our spaces and with my colleagues, we have discovered that the womb is the most legislated upon organ of our bodies. You can imagine if today we legislate on your hand that you will not eat without using your right hand. You can imagine how many people will be desegregated in this place. So many people have never used their left hand to eat. So women who carry the womb do not have any choice to make on their bodies. So laws have been used first because of cultural beliefs, because of stigma that is caused by misinformation. And we have seen this coming up in many sectors and areas within our countries, that people are peddling lies about access to safe abortion. They are peddling lies that it is being used by Western people. It's being used to curtail population, which is not right. The women and girls we are fighting for are in Africa, are in our own independent and homes. And I would want to urge you to remember that the women and girls can have a voice in this. So as IPAS, we do urge all state parties to ratify and implement the Maputo Protocol in its entirety without putting any reservation, because no right is above the other right. And promoting women's rights does not degrade, I can say, men's rights or any other right that exists for any human person. All rights are equal and promote equity. Thus, we want to encourage men who are part and many of the policymakers that we have to understand the issue of SRHR, the need for contraceptives for women, even in cases where women are able to access abortion services. In many countries, they are not able to get services on post-abortion care, post-abortion family planning, and this results in multiple incidences of them undergoing an unsafe abortion. Therefore, there is need to create awareness, and women and girls of Africa have come a long way.
Can you conclude, please? Can you conclude, please?
Yes. So women have come a long way in trying to promote their health. So what is the role of CSOs and the Commission to promoting SRHR and access to safe abortion? One is to support the campaign by the Commission. Two is to disseminate the general comment number 2, which expounds on Article 14(2)(c) on the right for women to access SRHR and safe abortion. So with that, also we want to urge state parties to look at the Maputo Plan of Action, which clearly stipulates the process of implementing the Maputo Protocol. So thank you very much. And
je vais à présent donner la parole à Patience Mungawari Mpani du Centre for Human Rights, qui va nous dire quelques mots sur les lignes directrices sur l'établissement des rapports des États en vertu du protocole de Maputo. Patience, you have 7 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Women in Africa, and members of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all protocols respectfully observed. The Center for Human Rights welcomes this panel discussion on the review of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action as we prepare to celebrate its 25th anniversary in 2020. The Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action is considered one of the most progressive plans for advancing women's rights. It focuses on removing all the obstacles to women's active participation in all spheres of life through ensuring women a full and equal share in economic, social, cultural, and political decision-making. Achieving progress in the 12 key areas of concern identified in the declaration, which Commissioner Aswagbo has already explained, is possible through the implementation of commitments made by state parties at international, regional, sub-regional, and national levels, whose objectives are in line with achieving transformational equality for women and girls. The Maputo Protocol is one such commitment made by African member states. Since the adoption of the Maputo Protocol in 2003, women's rights organizations have been cognizant of the fact that the adoption was only the first in many steps towards the protection and promotion of the rights of women and girls in Africa. As countries ratify the Maputo Protocol, the actual work and the real change in women's lives is in the implementation of the protocol. Through the advocacy of the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Women in Africa and women's rights organizations, including the SOA network, the Maputo Protocol currently has 41 ratifications, with Sao Tome and Principe being the most recent ratification in April of this year. The African Union's All for the Maputo Protocol program launched last year calls on all the remaining state parties to ratify the protocol to achieve universal ratification, and also for the accelerated domestication and implementation of the Maputo Protocol by member states. The significance of implementation of the Maputo Protocol is seen in the changed lives of women and girls on the African continent. The Maputo Protocol is held universally for expanding the normative framework for the protection of women's rights. It is the first legally binding treaty to address issues such as the right to medical abortion, protection of women who are living in polygamous marriages, and the prohibition of female genital mutilation and other harmful practices. Building on the Beijing Declaration, under the Maputo Protocol, women's rights to safe abortion has been accorded the highest human rights recognition. And it is the first legally binding human rights treaty to make an explicit reference to HIV and the protection of women with regards to HIV. In addition to these innovative provisions, the protocol addresses issues such as violence against women, child marriage, harmful practices, women's inheritance, women's economic empowerment, the right to property in cases of divorce, separation, or annulment of marriage, as well as women's political participation. It further affirms the protection of vulnerable and marginalized women, including older women, women with disabilities, and women in distress, and women in situations of armed conflict. Full implementation of the Maputo Protocol is key to achieving gender equality in Africa. However, challenges to implementation remain, and progress is taking a much slower pace than we desire. This is due to deeply entrenched patriarchal practices on the continent. Notwithstanding this, some achievement is evident, and I think Commissioner Swagbo has already spoken to the increased participation in women in decision-making roles, as well as the adoption of legislation addressing discrimination against women by various countries on the continent. Addressing discrimination through laws presents a critical starting point that eventually translates into substantive equality on the ground. One of the main avenues of monitoring the implementation of the Maputo Protocol is through the state reporting process. The 2014 Addis Ababa Declaration on Accelerating the Implementation of the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action reaffirmed the need for reporting on the implementations of commitments by state parties on gender equality and empowerment of women. State reporting monitors the progress of state parties in implementing the provisions of the protocol to guarantee the political, social, and economic rights of women and girls. State parties to the Maputo Protocol have an obligation to report to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights in accordance with Article 62 of the African Charter and Article 26(1) of the Maputo Protocol, requiring them to submit a report every 2 years from the time of ratification, and this report should detail the legislative, institutional, and any other measures that the state party has undertaken to promote and protect the rights of women and girls. The African Commission, after examining these state reports, issues states with concluding observations and recommendations. These concluding observations contain recommendations of pertinent actions that the state party should take with the objective of improving the state's protection and promotion of the rights of women and girls. To date, out of the 41 countries that have ratified the Maputo Protocol, only 14 countries have fully complied with their reporting obligation under the Maputo Protocol. These countries are Angola, Burkina Faso, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Lesotho, the Gambia, Malawi, Mauritania, Namibia, Nigeria, Rwanda, Senegal, South Africa, and Togo. And we have Zimbabwe, who have submitted a report for consideration at this 65th ordinary session of the African Commission. Nigeria is also noteworthy because it has reported twice under the Maputo Protocol. The African Commission has issued a set of guidelines on state reporting. These encourage state parties to produce one report that is made up of two parts. The first part, Part A, reporting on the African Charter, and Part B on the Maputo Protocol. These guidelines can be found on the African Commission website. And in addition, the Center for Human Rights has also developed a virtual platform to provide state parties to the Maputo Protocol with a range of information they need when developing these reports. However, with almost 65% of the state parties still to report, a challenge of non-compliance with the reporting obligation is obvious. This is evidenced by the growing backlog of overdue reports, not only to the Maputo Protocol, but to the Charter itself. Over the years, the Center for Human Rights, working with the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Women, has provided technical support to state parties to produce reports based on the African Commission issued guidelines. To date, the Center has trained 32 state parties to the Maputo Protocol, and in the last 2 years has provided 5 of these with technical assistance in producing a state report on both the African Charter and the Maputo Protocol. For such support, state parties can contact the Center for Human Rights through our website. Thank you.
Merci, Patience. Merci également au Centre des droits de l'homme qui a été toujours aux côtés du mécanisme de rapporteur spécial sur les droits de la femme en Afrique, en lui apportant tout l'appui nécessaire. Et c'est cet appui qui nous a valu d'élaborer et d'adopter les lignes directrices que les États doivent suivre dans la présentation de leur rapport périodique en vertu de l'article 26 du protocole de Maputo. Comme vous dites, 41 États ont ratifié le protocole de Maputo. Nous attendons encore 13 ratifications. Mais parmi ces 41 pays, depuis 2009, les lignes directrices existent. Seules Voilà, donc cette situation nous pénalise tous, mais nous vous devons des excuses en implorant votre indulgence pour ces désagréments. Merci. Donc je disais que 41 États ont ratifié le protocole. Nous attendons encore 13 ratifications. Et on espère que avant l'évaluation et toutes les festivités qui vont entourer Beijing plus 25, nous aurons certainement ces 13 ratifications ou au moins un certain nombre de ratifications sur le protocole de Maputo. Et sur les 41 États, seuls 19 à ce jour ont présenté leurs rapports périodiques en vertu du protocole de Maputo. Or, vous savez que c'est à travers ces rapports périodiques que nous arrivons à faire le point des développements positifs et à voir ensemble quels sont les défis que les États rencontrent pour une protection effective des droits des femmes. Donc nous encourageons les États à nous présenter également leurs rapports périodiques. Tous ceux qui ont ratifié le protocole devraient pouvoir s'engager à nous présenter des rapports périodiques. Je voudrais donner la parole à la dernière intervenante, la Commission des droits de l'homme du Kenya, qui a 7 minutes, Marie Kimemia. You have 7 minutes. Thank you.
Honorable Chair, Honorable Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols respectfully observed. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Mary Kimemia, working with the Kenya Human Rights Commission, a member of the FIDH, who worked closely with the Commission in the development of the guidelines on combating sexual violence and its consequences. The Beijing Platform for Action lists 12 critical areas of concern for women across the world, key among them being violence against women. We are proud of the African Commission because it has not been left behind. The Commission acknowledges that sexual violence is a matter of great concern in Africa. As such, it developed the African Commission guidelines on combating sexual violence and its consequences in Africa, and now known as the Luanda Guidelines. The guidelines are the result of broad civil society consultation that saw many survivors, over 50 organizations across the continent, sectoral experts, including medical, legal, and social experts, give their input. The guidelines are practical and victim-focused, containing progressive provisions and standards. They are very inclusive and cover sexual violence regardless of sex or sexual orientation. They have a broadened definition of sexual violence, where it defines sexual violence as any non-consensual sexual act, a threat or attempt to perform such an act, or compelling someone else to perform such an act on a third person. These acts are considered as non-consensual when they involve violence, a threat to violence, or coercion. Coercion can be as a result of psychological pressure, undue influence, detention, abuse of power, or taking advantage of a coercive environment, or the inability of a person to freely consent. This definition must be applied irrespective of the sex or gender of a victim and the perpetrator, and of the relationship between the victim and the perpetrator. The guidelines call for access to comprehensive health services for victims, independent of third parties, specific legislations and policy on combating sexual violence. The process of developing policies and action plans is made easy because the guidelines have discussed all applicable legal standards of the African Union. The guidelines understand the pervasive nature of sexual violence, and as such, recommend that statement of victims alone can be sufficient evidence without necessarily being corroborated. This is because most sexual violence cases are lost at this stage. They also recognize the unique circumstances of violence in terms of turmoil and conflict, and call for special measures to ensure that victims get redress, including setting up national judicial mechanisms to handle sexual violence. As part of response and treatment, the guidelines not only recognize that victims need access to contraception, they also urge states to provide for voluntary interruption of pregnancies, comprehensive post-abortion care, and HIV prevention and comprehensive care. Holistic reparation for victims, including restitution, rehabilitation, compensation, and satisfaction. It also anchors victims' voices at the center of reparation frameworks. In discussing sexual violence against women in Africa, we focused on sexual violence in the context of power. Sexual violence against women as a weapon in times of conflict is not new to Africa. It is a known fact that conflict is often a trigger of sexual violence. It was on this premise that Article 11.3 of the Maputo Protocol provides that these acts should be considered as war crimes, crimes against humanity, and that perpetrators are brought to justice, and the same is anchored in the guidelines. Sexual violence in the context of power is seen where government agencies and corporations have used sexual violence against women in various occasions, such as post-election violence on the part of state agencies, and as a tool of oppression and suppression by alternative voice, more so the opposition. There is not a single conflict in Africa in the recent times that has not been laced with the ugly face of sexual violence. Several African countries jump out when discussing the issue, and particularly on the state's actions and responsibilities when it comes to the protection of women against violence, in line with the commitment to the Beijing Platform for Action as well as the Maputo Protocol. Such a state is Kenya, where in Kenya a research done by the Kenya Human Rights Commission together with FIDH following the 2017 elections exposed planned and targeted sexual violence against women in regions known to be opposition strongholds as a weapon of war in times of conflict, such as post-election violence. The women interviewed during the research stated that the atrocities were occasioned on them by police officers and people who, although did not fit the standard physique of police officers, were dressed in police regalia and were using police vehicles and combating gear. The state, although the state has vehemently denied these allegations and have made no efforts to investigate or hold the officials responsible to account, and have neither made any efforts to rehabilitate the women who have suffered these violations. This has had a resultant effect of extreme voter apathy in the said areas, with the communities associating elections with sexual violence against their women, and as such have sworn against going to the ballot in the forthcoming elections in 2022. In the recent revolution in Sudan, over and above the disappearances and murders that marred the revolution, sexual violence against women was also a prevalent weapon used at this time, aimed at crippling the revolution, as women had been the face and heart of the revolution. Women and girls were not only sexually assaulted, but were murdered and left scattered in the streets. Sexual violence as a weapon of war is not new to the continent. Another area of concern has been corporates working in African lands, be it in large-scale farming or mining activities, and even for mega infrastructure projects. In Kenya, for instance, flower farms in Kenya have become notorious for sexual violence against women, owing to the fact that 70% of workers on the flower farms are women. The Maputo Protocol provides in Article 4 for the protection of women from all forms of violence, including sexual violence. The consequences of sexual violence have huge costs for the victims, communities, societies, and nations. Nevertheless, many policies are exclusive of the needs of women to be protected from sexual violence and do not provide
Conclude, please, because we have not enough time.
Yes. In conclusion, the major challenge in combating sexual violence in Africa has been a lack of a comprehensive and effective system through which victims of sexual violence can report the matter, access services, and demand accountability. The guidelines offer comprehensive direction to states to be responsive in the efforts to prevent, respond, and hopefully reduce, if not alleviate, sexual violence in their jurisdiction. The African Commission should heavily condemn and require justification and accountability from the member states that are yet to honor their obligations. The guidelines offer a comprehensive roadmap to how states can address sexual violence against women through its recommendations, and states only need to apply the recommendations as a commitment to the women who have suffered at the hands of state and corporate forces. Malawi is a good example of a state that has honored its obligation to the convention and protocol. The continued prevalence and popularity of sexual violence as a weapon of war in Africa is in blatant disregard of the protocol and the convention that should be met with consequences on the part of the states that encourage, condone, tolerate, or perpetrate the gross acts. We call on all African countries, in particular the executives, in their programming, parliaments in their development of laws and policies, the law enforcement and investigative arms in the policing and investigating of sexual violences, and the judiciaries in the process of adjudicating sexual violence to apply the standards set out in the guidelines and prepare action plans and guidebooks to sexual violence in their respective countries. Thank you.
Merci. Nous venons d'arriver péniblement à la fin de Voilà, donc je pense que sans plus tarder, nous allons donner la parole pour quelques minutes à l'assistance, et en particulier les représentants des États partis. Est-ce que nous avions considéré qu'il était utile d'avoir un représentant d'État et on avait envisagé avoir le représentant de la Gambie, malheureusement, qui nous a fait faux bond. Mais la parole, la prendre parmi les États partis pour nous dire quels sont les développements positifs qui ont été faits ou qui sont en cours dans les pays par rapport à l'implémentation du protocole de Maputo et à l'inclusion de la déclaration du programme d'action de Beijing dans les politiques et programmes nationaux. Les États partis? Je ne vois pas de demande de prise de parole. Les INDH? Les INDH? Non plus. Les ONG? Les ONG? J'espère que la salle n'est pas découragée par cette situation de va-et-vient des micros, de la lumière. Est-ce qu'il y a des... Oui, at the back, yeah? Yes? Oui? Venez au micro, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je suis Maître Assa Simone, avocat, présidente de l'Association des femmes juristes de Côte d'Ivoire. Je voudrais intervenir par rapport aux questions qui ont été débattues, notamment la bonne compréhension du protocole de Maputo sur le droit à l'avortement. Ce protocole a été adopté dans un cadre africain, prenant en compte, je pense, les mentalités des peuples africains. Et ce protocole précise les cas dans lesquels l'avortement doit être pratiqué ou peut l'être. Les cas de violence sexuelle, comme ça a été rappelé, le cas d'inceste et les cas de viol. Alors, lorsqu'on entend parler du protocole de Maputo en matière d'avortement, on a le sentiment qu'il faut généraliser l'avortement à tous les cas. Et prenant l'exemple de mon pays, la Côte d'Ivoire, les derniers tests qui ont été adoptés apportent une réponse à certaines questions. La question de l'inceste. L'inceste, dans l'ancienne législation, les enfants incestueux ne pouvaient pas être reconnus. Cela posait véritablement un problème et l'ouverture de l'avortement à cette question d'inceste pouvait se comprendre. La nouvelle loi sur la filiation, adoptée en juin 2019, apporte une réponse, permet la reconnaissance des enfants incestueux. La question du viol également a été prise en compte dans la mesure où le nouveau code pénal en Côte d'Ivoire étend l'avortement médicalisé au cas de viol. Doit-on considérer que la Côte d'Ivoire apporte une réponse suffisante au protocole de Maputo sur les questions d'avortement, dans la mesure où les violences sexuelles qui entraînent une grossesse dans notre législation s'assimilent au viol? Ai-je la bonne compréhension? Je vous remercie.
Merci. Oui. La deuxième intervenante au fond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Louisa, and I'm from Kenya. The organization I work for is called the Gay and Lesbian Coalition of Kenya. And I wish to commend all the panelists for the information that they've shared so far and commend the states and CSOs in this space that are working towards advancing the rights of women in Africa. Mine is just to contribute to the conversation and to welcome us all to recognize the stratification of discrimination with regard to sexual violence and access to safe abortion. And I welcome us to address this at both state, regional, and CSO and NGO level, and recognize that there is a divide between access to justice, health and protection of women with regard to these topics, with regard to rural and urban women living in rural and urban areas, heterosexual women versus lesbian, bisexual, trans women and trans men who are pre-op, rich and poor adolescent girls. And I also want us to welcome the fact that it's not the womb of the woman that is heavily legislated in Africa, it's the body of the woman. Thank you.
Oui, je voyais une troisième main. Oui. Hein? Rwanda. Rwanda, s'il vous plaît. Merci.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Merci, Madame la Commissaire. With regard to the positive development on the Maputo Protocol, the implementation of Maputo Protocol in Rwanda, I want to mention that last year, 2018, with the revision of our penal code, the condition to have the court order so the doctor can perform abortion was removed. And now the abortion is not criminalized in the Rwandan Penal Code. And following that new law, even the women and girls who were in jail, who were convicted for because of abortion and infanticide, in April 2019, His Excellency the President of the Republic, exercising his prerogative of mercy, he pardoned 367 women and girls who were in jail, convicted for abortion. And recently in October, the rest of 52 women and girls, including 3 men who were accomplices of that act, were pardoned. And now we can say that in our prisons, it's 100%. There is no longer someone who is convicted for having exercised abortion. Now it's safe and legal to practice it. Thank you.
Merci. Est-ce qu'il y a une autre demande de prise de parole? Eritrea.
One of the most important dynamics in Eritrea's nation building is women equality and empowerment. And this emanates from the long history of the national liberation struggle, where women played a decisive role. And in fact, in the National Charter of Eritrea, it has been reflected that a society that cannot liberate women is not truly liberated. So there are policies, strategies contained in the institutional and legal framework of the country, and the effort has been to mainstream women equality and empowerment in the country. Organizationally, the National Union of Eritrean Women is mandated by the government to oversee the overall effort on women equality and empowerment, but more so to consolidate this. All ministries and national institutions, including agencies, have gender focal points for mainstreaming women equality and empowerment in Eritrea. I would not go into the overall effort that's taking place now in the country, as that has been reflected in our previous report and will be updated in the near future. But there are 2 important things in connection to what has been discussed here that I would like to just mention. One is on harmful practices and sexual violence. This has been targeted extensively. One very important experience that could be shared here with all participants is on harmful practices and sexual gender violence. There is a popular movement, a grassroots popular movement throughout the country, in all villages, in all sub-regions, in all regions, and at national level, against these evil practices. And in fact, both FGM and underage marriage have dramatically decreased throughout the country. One of the most important things in this drive is the whole society in the grassroots level has been mobilized, including elders, religious leaders, administrative institutions, all national civic associations at grassroots level. And there are committees established to oversee this as well. There are more than 3,700 committees for FGM and early marriage throughout the country at grassroots local level, and at sub-regional and regional level, this goes up to the national level. And very recently, a ministerial committee to oversee this and coordinate this effort has been established. And for this reason, FGM and early marriage have dramatically decreased in Eritrea. Popular movement will be a main drive so that people could be active participants and beneficiaries
as highly affected by these policies. Therefore, it's very important that governments are able to allocate resources to provide for SRHR for women and girls. And in cases where they are dealing with teenagers, because of there is a rise case of teenage pregnancy, there should be youth-friendly services that are available to all these public facilities. We want to emphasize that under the Maputo Protocol, very many countries have gone beyond the indicators provided under the Maputo Protocol, and they have clearly seen a reduction in maternal mortality and morbidity. Therefore, decriminalization of abortion is not what some term as encouragement to abortion. No, it is protecting the health of women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you. Patience, have you something to add?
Thank you very much. I just want to conclude by speaking in line with the All for Maputo Protocol program by encouraging state parties, the 13 states that have not yet ratified the Maputo
is adopted in their national legislations, going over and above violence against women on the broader spectrum of gender and sexual and gender-based violence.
Thank you. Now, our special rapporteur.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me start by thanking Madam Chair for accepting to moderate this panel, and also to thank all the panelists for their time. As far as ratifications are concerned, we did not in a particular way highlight the fact that there are states which have made reservations to the protocol upon ratification. So we also urge them to remove those reservations in order to permit women of their respective countries to benefit from the entire rights of the Maputo Protocol. And we of the African Commission have it as a motto that human rights are collective responsibility. And now urge all stakeholders to take their respective roles to ensure that the Maputo Protocol and all other instruments that address human rights are fully implemented. Thank you very much.
Merci, Madame la rapporteure. Je voudrais donc, dans mon mot de clôture, remercier effectivement tous ces panélistes qui ont présenté les droits des femmes nationales du protocole de Maputo. La formation des parlementaires, la formation des magistrats, la formation des avocats. Et également sur la question de l'avortement, je pense qu'effectivement la révision du code pénal de la Côte d'Ivoire vient à point nommé et est conforme à ce qui est dit dans le protocole de Maputo, à savoir l'avortement médicalisé, facilité lorsque la grossesse résulte d'un viol, de l'inceste, ou lorsque la santé de la mère et de l'enfant est en danger. Mais souvent en Afrique, et nous le savons tous, les lois ne suffisent pas. Il faut que cette loi soit vulgarisée, elle soit connue, y compris par le personnel de santé. Et qu'un accompagnement au niveau des structures de santé, qui est effectivement des services qui soient dédiés à l'avortement médicalisé, répondant effectivement aux conditions et prévues par la loi, non seulement le protocole de Maputo, mais le code pénal de juin 2019. Et c'est là, je pense que les femmes, les associations féminines et l'association des femmes juristes devraient effectivement faire en sorte que cette loi soit connue par les femmes, par les services de santé, et qu'elles puissent également s'assurer que les femmes qui ont besoin effectivement d'avortement médicalisé ne soient pas trimballées d'un service à un autre. Il faut chercher une autorisation du médecin, il faut chercher l'autorisation du juge. Donc s'assurer que toutes ces autorisations-là qui étaient préalablement en place soient effectivement enlevées et complètement annulées. Pour les femmes, donc il y a une sensibilisation du personnel médical et un accompagnement pour que le reste de la population ne soit pas hostile et ne dise pas que les pouvoirs publics sont en train d'encourager le libertinage ou quoi que ce soit. Je pense qu'il est toujours utile de contextualiser ce genre de progrès dans les lois, de les expliquer et d'avoir une large vulgarisation, une large adhésion, une large compréhension des populations. Et s'assurer aussi qu'il y a des ressources pour justement ces nouveaux programmes qui doivent être inclus au niveau des centres de santé. S'assurer effectivement qu'en amont, avant d'en arriver à l'avortement, en amont, les services de planification familiale sont disponibles, ils sont utilisés et ils sont budgétisés avec l'adhésion des hommes qui sont effectivement au niveau des familles encore ceux qui décident justement de ces questions-là. On parle du droit des femmes, de nombre des enfants, de fixer le nombre des enfants, de décider de leur sexualité, mais nous savons que dans la pratique, cela n'est pas facile, surtout au niveau rural, et que le nombre d'enfants par femme, surtout dans nos pays au Sahel, continue de poser problème parce qu'il faut une adéquation entre justement les ressources humaines et les ressources financières. Quand on nous dit que chaque femme a 7 enfants et que cela est trop, je pense que nous devons réfléchir par nous-mêmes pour savoir que, effectivement, dans certains cas, c'est trop. Et voir quelles sont les politiques, quels sont les programmes en amont au niveau de la planification familiale et renforcer la protection des femmes pour qu'elles ne courent pas le risque d'être violées. Elles ne courent pas le risque, effectivement, d'avoir des grossesses précoces, d'avoir des grossesses indésirées. Donc, Madame la Présidente de l'Association des femmes juristes, je crois que la rapporteure est là pour soutenir vos actions. La Commission